So based on the thumbnail and title, you probably are aware of what this video is about. I want to justify Ben 10 turning into a Digimon in ways never done before, because no one else thinks it's possible. To that I say nay. But first, especially for those unaware, I'm going to outline how the Omnitrix works. For the Digimon fans in the audience, that's the wristwatch that turns them into aliens. The Omnitrix has 3 rules when scanning a new alien transformation. Rule 1. Is it smart enough? There is a wide variety of what is or isn't considered smart enough, but generally speaking, the smartest alien Ben has is Grey Matter, and the dumbest is Wild Mutt. With Ben being smarter than Wild Mutt actually, which means that he can turn into things dumber than him, just not by much. The DNA has to be different enough from the host. So for example, if you, a human, put on the watch, you wouldn't be able to turn into other human beings. And now for the most loosely defined rule. The alien must have DNA. But this DNA doesn't have to be deoxyribonucleic acid, which is what our human DNA is, but rather the kind of thing that defines what an organism is going to be. For example, the ectoneurite species has a very different definition of what is being alive. They're kind of alien ghosts in a way. Other aliens with similar situations are Nosedenians, who are living energy, and Sonorosians, who are living sound trapped in a silicone suit. And then there's species like Galvanic mechamorphs, which have a more complex version of what it means to be genetic. They're biomechanical beings that do have bio aspects, but they're also not purely biological. The same goes for Chronosapiens. And Atomics is species. The only difference is those two weren't made by a living being that already existed, like the mechamorphs were made by Azimuth. And then there's Nanomech, which is a whole other situation. Nanomech is Ben's transformation of a microchip, which is a biomechanical being, but the mechanical aspects were filled in by Ben's human DNA, which asks the question of, is that how Upgrade works? Is that how Buzzshock works? And if they are, obviously it can't be too much of an input from Ben's DNA, because then he wouldn't be able to turn into one. Or maybe the Omnitrix has a different function for if the species needs the DNA filled in. But now onto the second section, how Digimon work, which is usually the point of contention where people think that Ben can't turn into one. Also forgive me, most of my stuff is going to be coming from the Adventure anime and the Tamers anime, because those are the two I'm most familiar with and the ones I like the most. So now let's go through the Omnitrix rules and see how Digimon fits. Rule 1, Intelligence. Most Digimon seem to be of enough intelligence for the Omnitrix to scan, and a lot of the ones who don't are under mind control. But there are some that seem more feral, although this may be more so a product of their environment, rather than a biological unintelligence. Rule 2, Ben isn't a Digimon in any way, and if you or I put on the watch, neither of us would be. And now for Rule 3. This is where I'm going to make a case for why Digimon would be scannable via the Omnitrix, despite what everyone else thinks. So most people just think Digimon are made of purely code, and this is mostly true, in the digital world. To the point where everything in the digital world, even beings from our world who go in there, are made of data. But then when those people come back, they turn into normal flesh and blood again. So if a Digimon comes to our world, would it not make sense that they would fit the rules of our world and become flesh and blood here, like we do in theirs? Because the digital world isn't just a computer program, it is an alternate dimension. There's a certain layer of magic that the digital world contains, which is why people are able to go there at all. More supporting evidence is that Digimon in the human world are able to interact with biological matter. For example, Vamptimon can drink human blood. Digimon like Agumon or Vmon can eat human food. So is it not reasonable to assume that when a Digimon comes to our world, their code becomes biological code, similar to DNA, like what the Omnitrix can scan? And hell, this only requires them being mostly biological. There is evidence that they are still made of code to some extent in our world, but Digimon like Beelzemon Blast Mode being made of a toy gun, and their ability to interact with our world in the aforementioned ways, lead me to believe that the Omnitrix could just fill in the rest of the DNA with a bit of Ben's. Because when a Digimon is in our world, the metal bits act like metal, the flesh bits act like flesh, and flesh is made of DNA. But okay, if we assume that I'm correct, then what would Ben even turn into? I see 3 different options. The first option is that each starting form of a Digimon would count as a different transformation, and Ben could turn into any of the Digimon evolutions from there. Of course, this would require scanning multiple Digimon. Option 2, Ben would just turn directly into whatever the feasibly strongest Digimon would be at all. There's also the possibility of, if this is in the Tamers universe, biomerge digivolving with a friend to form an even stronger form. And the third argument is that Ben could turn into literally any Digimon with the press of the watch, because Digimon evolve by shifting around their code, and theoretically the strongest Digimon would probably be able to do that naturally, so Ben could theoretically just turn into any Digimon he wanted whenever he wanted. Although perhaps the starting form would be kind of a physical representation of the data in the Omnitrix, or something related to the code of the watch. As a fan of both Digimon and Ben 10, I feel like I have an interesting perspective on this that other people don't really point out because they're only fans of one thing or the other. If you agree with this video and have any friends that disagree, send it to them. Prove them wrong. Have a little debate in the comments if you want. Now granted, you could just argue the Omnitrix wouldn't be able to fill in the gaps like with Nanomech, or that too little of the Digimon are biological so it's too hard to justify it. However, I have 2 more arguments for you before the end of this video. One, it's cool as fuck. And secondarily, the alien Scourge works in a similar way that the Omnitrix does it takes DNA and it uses it to create forms out of it. And I think it would be odd if he couldn't do that with the Digimon's features. And the same kind of goes for the watch. But thank you for watching this video. If you subscribe, I'll see you sometime next week for a probably entirely unrelated topic. But I have been Eris, and do not forget to like and subscribe!